this is one of the places where they actually are living an ideal, which is a true teacher is a student of his or her students, and a real student is a teacher of his or her teacher. And that's a beautiful thing. And in many ways, you have talked a lot about being turned into a monster and the stereotypes of people in prison, people in death row, the worst of the worst. But that dynamic, that culture, inculcates most education institutions. So most educational institutions thrive on stereotyping. They thrive on labeling. Labeling is the toxic language of most schools in Chicago, and you're labeled not by what you can do, but by what you can't do. So the toxic habit of labeling by deficit is exactly what College Unbound is fighting against. It's doing the opposite. It's finding a way to be expansive in how we see each other, and not negative and not small-minded, but in large.
I get to be the honorary host of Unshackled Building Bridges. And one of the things I love about this specific podcast is that we get to talk about everyday conversations and how we're building community. And so I wanted to take the honor of saying to the world, my friend and professor, Bill Ayers, and our president of College Unbound, Adam Bush, and y'all know the most famous Renaldo Hudson. But I just wanted to have a really quick conversation with y'all about how did this come about? Like, how did you all figure out, one, Adam, that you wanted to have a set here, a community here of College Unbound, and what was that process?
It's actually just like, it's institutions of learning that are the dummies that say it only counts over here if you're sitting in the classroom, or only counts over here if you pay tuition. But actually, learning has existed far before there were institutions of learning. We're always learning. And so what we got to do, I think, really as a commitment to the world we want to create, is find new ways to honor the ways that we learn in the world always. That's what College Unbound is built around. It's a college built on the principle, the affirmative value that we are always learning. And so let's create a higher ed institution that offers an accredited bachelor's degree that is born out of the ways that we learn, the ways that we gather, and the ways that we could gather to do different learning together. And so when we started in Providence a decade ago, it was a thing that was very place-based in Providence and hadn't yet thought about how expansive it could be around the country. This work in Chicago is 3 years in, and the work that's happening here in the cohort that you and Bill are a part of is, to me, the most authentic version of College Unbound possible. It's around a kitchen table, it's deeply caring, it is challenging the systems that we're all connected to, and it imagines a new way of being in the world.
That's wonderful. Bill,
Well, for me, I felt very honored that Adam asked me to be a part of it. And then when he told me that it was going to be built around you and some of the other comrades who've come out of prison, I found it irresistible. But to me, what Adam is describing is the kind of education that I've tried to practice for 60 years. And that is an education that's based on a curriculum that's based on asking big questions, important questions, and a teaching practice or a pedagogy that's based on dialogue. So the role of the teacher isn't to be the sage on the stage or the wizard above everything. The role of the teacher is to find ways to help unlock the wisdom in the room. The wisdom's already there. How do you unlock it and create the conditions where folks can learn from one another, horizontally, as well as, any other way. And I think that what's been so inspiring to me is that we have built a community. Just the half a dozen of us have built a community that has each other's backs, that cares for each other, and is trying hard to work together, because learning is social. It's not just individual. And that's a tricky thing in any educational setting, how do you hold in your mind at the same moment that each one of us is the one of one? There will never be another. You are induplicable. And at the same time, we're each one of the many, and we need each other. We are each other's magnitude and bond, as Gwendolyn Brooks says. So I've just been inspired to be part of it.
You know, there's a class that every student takes at College Unbound called Reframing Failure. You know it well. And that class was born out of what you just said, Bill. It's we want the college to inspire folks to create new work in the world, projects that are at the heart of who they are and the change they're trying to create. And while doing that, we have to recognize the work everyone else is doing. The other projects that went before us, the histories and legacies we're building on,
right.
The struggles of putting anything into action, and the ways we all have to understand that we're intertwined and connected.
Yeah.
What was reframing failure like for you, Renaldo?
No, reframing failure was really like coming home, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because inside, I had to deal with that dynamic of both wanting to be free, but also struggling with a system that is designed around punishing failure rather than trying to help you fix it or use it for energy to say, here's what went wrong. And so one of the questions, for example, that I wrestled with doing the course was, how do you ask the question of yourself to improve self, right? How do you, like I had one dynamic I'll share is, as when I came into the class, into the course, I came in as the director of education and not Renaldo, the student. And I began to hit against a wall, which was really a good wall. This wall that I came up against was other students who showed up as students were standing their grounds and stretching to be better. And I was like, I got this. I'm telling you, I'm a natural teacher. And what I realized is that I didn't need to be a teacher, I needed to be a student. And in reframing failure, I was able to think about and being able to consult with Bill and say, hey man, listen, like I think I need to quit. Because this class is people that work with me, that I actually directly supervise, and I'm too close to. And then the question when we had a conversation was like, well, how are you approaching it? Like, how are you showing up? And when I thought about it, I was like, oh, I'm showing up as the director. Mm-hmm. I failed myself, and I was offending the opportunity to grow. I was losing an opportunity to grow because I wasn't making room to be a student. And so when I reframed it and said, hey, wait a minute, turn off, put your director hat in the office and just show up and be still. And you still have something to contribute. Because the other dynamic is when you are used to being a boss, when you are used to being a leader, you're used to having the mic. You're used to instructing. And to be willing to say, let me shut up and see who will lead. And I noticed something powerful. Everyone in the course has something mighty to say, and they was willing to help. And like one of the professors said earlier, I was so pleased with the smile. You made me smile so big, Denzel, because as you were learning stuff, you were willing to help others. And being in that type of atmosphere is amazing. And there's no college like that.
Well, you know,
But College Unbound.
But College Unbound. But it reminds me that this is one of the places where they actually are living an ideal, which is a true teacher is a student of his or her students, and a real student is a teacher of his or her teacher. And that's a beautiful thing. And in many ways, you have talked a lot about being turned into a monster and the stereotypes of people in prison, people in death row, the worst of the worst. But that dynamic, that culture, inculcates most education institutions. So most educational institutions thrive on stereotyping. Mm-hmm. They thrive on labeling. Labeling is the toxic language of most schools in Chicago, you know, and you're labeled not by what you can do, but by what you can't do. So the toxic habit of labeling by deficit is exactly what College Unbound is fighting against. It's doing the opposite. It's finding a way to be expansive in how we see each other, and not negative, and not small-minded, but enlarging and generous.
Yeah, but it's also because one of the things I always push in our community about is one of the things that I think is a deficit is that you can both own your responsibility while not making yourself a continued victim or a victim mindset.
Absolutely.
And because we don't frame the conversation that gives people room to heal. Some people need to hear someone say, I'm sorry. Some people need to hear someone say, I want to be better. How can we cross that bridge? And so I love that we're crossing the bridge and that your home has become our lab. I love that.
I love it too, but one of the things you told me early on when we knew each other is you said, from the moment I was arrested until today, nobody in the system said, what do you need?
Yeah.
Nobody said to this child in trouble, what do you need?
Yeah.
Nobody said to this man getting out of prison, what can I do to help? What do you need? And that's the exact opposite of what I think the culture that you've created in College Unbound.
Yeah, I think it's important because you can even be in spaces where people are asking you that, but not really meaning it.
Don't mean it.
Right? Because that's the difference. Because I had people ask the question, but it was to check a box. Right? It wasn't to help a person.
It's like when you're walking by someone quickly on the street and you say, hey, how are you? You don't really want them to actually answer the question. You're just walking past.
But what I was thinking, you getting out of the joint, for example, they didn't give you a social worker or a psychologist. They gave you a parole agent or something like that.
No, listen, I always tell people, right, when I came home, I received a parole officer to patrol my trauma, which is wild, rather than a therapist to help me unpack it.
Exactly.
And so it was only when the Chicago Torture Justice Center, right, said, hey man, listen, you are a victim, you are a survivor of the judicial system. The criminal legal system victimized you because it didn't work to help you.
Right.
And it had a duty to do that, not just try to punish you. Right? Or not just try to correct you. Right? And so for me, I like now move forth where I want to bring everybody into a community that's safe, that they're improving in. Because I think if we're going to have a safe community, if we're ever going to end prison, like my class project is ending mass incarceration.
Right.
My life mission is to end mass incarceration.
Let's do it.
And so I'm putting the book together, Voices of the Movement. But what I realize is that we have to build the world we want to free people in. Right? If we're going to get rid of prisons, then we need to have a world that doesn't have room for prisons, or people that are called prisoners rather than people who've committed offenses.
I'm thinking also, you're so good about unpacking language and making sense of things. The phrase the Department of Corrections is just it's just false from start to finish. That's the Department of Punishment or the Department of Cruelty. It's like I always feel the Department of Defense should go back to its original name, Department of War. That's what it really is. It's constant war, but they call themselves. But another one that we've talked about is, child welfare or family services. They should call that family policing.
Yeah,
That's what it is.
Yeah, I think too, and I'm a big advocate, Bill, of like being really careful. And I'll tell you what language is so important. Because I want to build a world where I'm inviting people in. And my 37 years, you know what I discovered? That even in that space that people will condemn, there were people that wanted to help.
Right.
There were people in there that were good people that's just working bad jobs. And so, like for me, I'm always trying to figure out how do we get the 30,000+ people, for example, that are in prison in College Unbound. We have to work with the people that's making the decisions. And they have to feel like they're invited into a conversation rather than into a whooping. Yeah. Because we will whoop, like in our communities of activism, we will whoop the heck out of the police, right? And so I'm really, really intentional about the language of crossing the bridge. Because I tell people, I always take buckets of water, right? Because someone will set a fire, and I want to be able to come back across the bridge. Or someone I love might need to cross the bridge on the other side, say, can you swim? Because, the movement said to burn, baby, burn. I'm like, no. You know that from executions. But anyway, I just wanted to thank y'all, and I don't want to hold y'all hostage. I just wanted the world, especially a community that don't know we exist. And so we want to let everyone know that we welcome them. Can we pull your?
I'll pull my shirt down. I'll just, College Unbound. We just celebrated a 10-year anniversary as a college. But before we were already approved of the college, the first work we were doing was work behind bars. You can't be a thing with Unbound in your name and not be challenging the notion of confinement, of where liberatory learning can exist, should exist, and most importantly needs to exist to imagine a new way of learning together. That's at the heart of what we're trying to do, I think.
And it's one of the most hopeful things. I mean, I think when you think about being on death row and a group of young men saying, we're not going to let the state of Illinois execute us, and starting a movement that really began in the darkest of places. If you think you got it bad, whoever's listening to this, imagine being in that dark place and finding education and liberation at your fingertips, within you.
Yeah, I think it's so important that people know our stories. That's why we want to tell our stories. We want to put them in books. We want to put them in the air. But more than anything, we want to invite more people. Because I love the thing that you always remind me, Bill, is you were like, man, like, while you're wonderful and unique, Renaldo, and you always remind me how pretty I am, I recognize that I'm one of many.
That's right.
Right? There's so many that don't have a chance.
That's right.
But with College Unbound, they do. And that's the word that I want to end with, that come join us, support us, love us, be in community with us.
Unshackled Building Bridges.
Thank you.
Ronnie's seen it all from the inside walls. Gil got a vision that still stands tall. We don't beg for seats, we build our own. Bridge by bridge, we're bringing them home. Chains fall, bridges rise.